In Kumlan of Lat Gemara, today's daf is Daf Lamed Beis. We are up to the Mishnah, and the Mishnah continues. The last thing we looked about was the knife fall out on its own. We said that it's not considered tzrich unless you do this tzrich yourself. And we're going through different disqualifications. We are up to the Mishnah of Lamed Beis. We have this disqualification of shear. Shear is that you paused. Question is, how long do you have to pause for before we say that this disqualifies the shechita? So it says the Mishnah, Nafla sakin, the knife fell off out of your hand, v'higbi, and you lifted it. Nafla kelev, your kalim fell down, and v'higbi, you closed it down, whatever it is, and you picked him up. So you paused. You don't clothes or whatever it is you wear. Yeah. He's as hasakin. What happened? You were sharpening the knife off, and it caused you to become tired. And in the middle of the shechita, you just couldn't continue. Bob chaveda v'shachan, and your friend came along and continued. If the time that you delayed was long enough to shecht, well, susi means shechting another behemoth from beginning to end, then you puzzle. And Shimon says, and we have this all the time, if you make a pause in the middle of lane Krishma, if you waited long enough to finish the entire Krishma, you have to start again. Or no, not something like that. If you wait long enough to be able to say the whole thing, then you have to start again. The time it takes to visit, to show. What does that mean? We'll soon see. So anyone might get what do you mean? The time it takes a shech. What time is that? We'll have different opinions. Had you taken another behema, how long would it take the shech? A minute? That's the time that if you pause longer than that, it's possible. What about a bird? Is it also a minute by a bird as well? That's what it takes to shech the behema. The same amount of time allotted for a bird. Sorry, and a bird for bird. So the time for a bird is how long it takes to shech the bird. For behema, how long it takes to shech the behema, and for a bird, Or do we say no? That this is one time. We only have one set time, whatever it is for behema, and that's all cases of pause. Because within behemoths itself, you have different categories. Are we going to go further and the lambs take longer, or whatever, goats and cows? It's all the same. He said, I wasn't that friendly with my uncle, the Shaila, to ask. I didn't feel yet comfortable when we learned the sugya to ask questions. Interesting. So we just learned Yavis. Itma, we learned So Rav later on decided on his own, each category is their own. And Shul says, I feel behemoth. No, it's only one set time for everything. He goes to the time for an oif is one set time, and that's it. Adds not the time it takes to shecht another behemoth is the length of the pause, but how long it takes to bring one as well. So you want to ask, bring one from your house. Everybody lives different distances from the shlachter. So I feel ma'alma from the world of South Ocean from your house. Then every person will have a different pause time depending where you live. I'm going to pop a medes lahatil ika benaya. We're talking about it's ready, standing there, ready to be taken, and that's what we're talking about over here. In other words, it's ready to be taken, but you haven't yet prepared it. That's what it means. Because it's not you have to turn the animal over, whatever. You didn't do all that yet. That's the time.
Usually means that's the difference between them. So
the difference is one opinion says it has the time it takes to shech the behemoth, and when Tanina comes along and says no, the time it takes to take a behemoth that's standing in that room, but you have to prepare it. You have to get it. Take an extra minute or two, so it's a bit longer. In order, it takes the time to lift it. The time to lift the yabitzan and wash it, v'yishcha and shecht it. No, it's even longer time. Daka the daka, and for example, for a goat, for a lamb, it's usually a short amount of time, and gasa the gasa. Every category is a different time set. So we have different opinions there. What's the time? So the fact that we say behemoth daka daka and gasa legasa means that also we say that going back before oif oif and behemoth behemoth. We're up to right before the mission of Lam Beis, but Oliver talking about the pausing, how long you have to pause. Amar Rava says Rava, and we say time we had different opinions. Time to shechet for another behemoth, or take a behemoth to turn it over, to wash it. What's the time of the length of a pause? And we also had a discussion whether for a bird it's the same amount of time. Like you have one set time where every category is different. We're about 5 lines above the Mishnah. If somebody uses a dull knife, I feel the kolayim kulik. If he takes him all day long to shech one behemoth, it's kosher. Then Boy Rava asked a question. So right now the Gemara thinks that, I don't know, that's not called pausing or something. Boy Rava asked a question. Let's say you pause for a second, then you cut and you pause for a second. If you combine all the times that you pause, it'll be the full time of a Shia. But you never did that length of time in one go. So let's say it's a minute, which it isn't, but let's say it's a minute. So you did 10 seconds here, pause, 10 seconds here, pause, 10 seconds here, pause, 6 times. Is the aggregate, is the cumulative, yeah. He just said you shech the whole day long. And right now we think is that he's shechting, pausing. The only way we understood it over the beginning is that he's very slow shechter, and he keeps on pausing for a second, then he shechts, he's pausing for a second. So therefore, there's no one period of shahir. That's why it's kosher. So what's your question? So anyone know? They were talking about you didn't pause at all. You have a very dull knife and you go really slow when you're cutting. You're not pressing, you're cutting. But what happens if you take a wash here? Are they mitzvah or not? We haven't answered. But that's a question. Sure, money. Mahu. What happens? You shechted the reif simin, which you say is kosher, and you walk away. But you didn't walk away. You then did a shia and you continued. Do we say, like we learned yesterday, it's like one long shchita, and therefore you passel it now? Or do we say, no, once you did the reif, it's over, and especially you stop for a second, so that's over, and now whatever you do after, who cares? Teikum. Back to Kasha. Rab Shimon says, "Im shok the big Rab Shimon says the time it takes to investigate. My bika, what do we get a bika? Time to investigate, to examine. What does that mean? The time it takes to get a chacham to come over and to check your knife. So you want again, the chacham lives in his house, and depending where the chacham lives, he can't sat to the bechashur, and every pose will be different." Says the Gemara, the bika tabach chacham. If the tabach himself, the sheikhet himself, who used to be the butcher, the sheikh used to be the same person. If that person was a chacham, how long would it take him? According to Shimon, he says that's the time of a pause, because maybe you're allowed to give it to a quick check, but if it takes longer than that, then that's considered a shahir. Okay, now remember that two simonim when we shech the behemoth. One is the esophagus, and one is the gargetus or the trachea. And the trachea is the one that you always come through first, and then you go to the veshet. Some people pronounce it, by the way, veshet. Some people pronounce it veshet, and there's no agreement anywhere. So whatever somebody says this one way, lav dafne. But when we were walking, we used to say veshet. But now some people say veshet or whatever. You were shechting the esophagus. Upasak esagageres. So you did the first siman right, but there's no law which siman has to be first. You did the first siman right, but the second siman you broke. In other words, it's a psul. The second siman is a psul. Now remember, by behemoth, when we shech, you do two things. You allow you to eat it, and we take away the nevela part of it. There's no longer any tumah. And if let's say you shecht an animal correctly, but turned out to be treif, something problem, then there's no nevela here. You're not allowed to eat it, but there's no tumah here. So here what happened was you shechted one siman. You didn't shech both siman. You shech one siman, and you broke through the gagera. So now that the behemoth is what do you call it? It's treif. Or the other way around. You broke through the gagera. They shechted the veshet. So one siman you did correctly, shchita, and one was turned out to be you became treif. The question is it unavailable, or is at least you did shechting one siman, there's no longer available anymore. It's only treif. You shechted one of them, and then you waited until it died. There's a sack in no, but you did a half a shchita. Or you did the one correctly, and then you wedged in the knife, and you made we said before, was when you conceal the knife. You put it between the siman. Rabbi Sheva says nevela. Rabbi Sheva says if it's a shchita, if the shchita itself is no good, if the shchita never finished, then it's still a nevela. And Rabbi Kiva says no. That's since you did one siman, it's already only a treif, it's no longer nevela. Rabbi Sheva, this is the rule. If it became puzzle during the shchita, in the shchita itself became puzzle, then nevela. You did a proper shchita. The problem is something else. Something else caused it to be puzzle. Then it's treifa. Like over here. The shchita. Over here is nevela. Over here, the shchita the psul was in the shchita itself. You only had one siman to shech. The other siman you couldn't shech because it was pasuk, whatever it is. So that's the psul of the shchita itself. It's still on the vegla. But if you shecht it correctly and you found a nekua, you found a puncture in the veshet, you found a puncture in the day in the lungs, that's davar achar. That is only a treifa. And at the end, we finally agreed to him. Let me ask a question. The next Mishnah, so the next Perek, I mean, it starts off Elu treifas behema. It gives you a list of treifas by behema, and one of them is okay. The kubas avesha. We learned a puncture in the esophagus, or gageres. One of them is if the gageres turned out to be cut through, broken through, and it's possible. Our Mishnah said if a psik is a gageres, the other one you'd shecht it properly in the psik gageres to the vela. The next Mishnah is elu treifus, and it says that very case. So what's going on here? So the Gemara said it depends. Maybe it depends. If it depends like this. If you did the first simon, you shechted it properly, so you already started the shchita, and then there was a psik of a gageres, we'll say that was a psul in the shchita and it's an avela. But over there is talking about that first you were placing the gageres before you started the shchita. So the animal's already treif before you started the shchita. That's like dover acha garam lo, and that's why it's only treif. That's what Rava's answer is. Here we're talking about you shechted through first the simon, let's say of the veshet, and then you so it happened in the middle of the shchita. And kansha possible shachat, and there is talking about over there where it says el treifus is talking about first the gageres are broken and then you shechted. Shachat say possibly shechted first nifsle b'shchita. That's absolutely in the shchita. That's nevela. Pasak it was treif already before you started the shchita because the shchita was the second simon. Well, the shachat kidav alachar garam lo the pasal dam yis, but it's only treif and therefore it's. If you want to ask a question straight away. I don't understand what you're saying. Shochat says in our Mishnah clearly. There were two cases in our Mishnah we just learned. Case number one is shochat that's you shechted properly with pasageres. That's right. So you did a shchita, and then it's a psul in the shchita. But the next case is pasuk in our Mishnah. Pasuk is a gageres v'achgash zaveshet. In our Mishnah, the next case is you broke through the gageres. And then you shechted the Vesha, so it was treif before you started shechting it. Our Mishnah says it's an avela, and the next Mishnah says elu treifus. If it's a psek zagageres, the status still remains. Amos Rav answers, no, you misunderstood Shatna Mishnah. Not that first it was a broken gageres and they shechted. Amo kvar shachet the Vesha. It was a broken gageres, and after you shechted the Vesha, you suddenly realize a broken gageres. So therefore, you already started the shchit, and that's why it's only treif. So Rav Acha says klepnisht. Straight to it. I have two questions on you. So if you're going to tell me that case number 2 in the Mishnah is you already shechted, it means you shechted the Vesha first and they found gageres. The Mishnah says that clearly. That was case number 1. You already had that. Why did the Mishnah repeat it? Number 1. And number 2, it says what not the achikach. That's clearly in the words of the Mishnah. You shechted you broke the gageres and afterwards you shechted the Vesha. Afterwards, how can you say it already happened? So Rosh said, right. I'll give you a better answer. Elam. Elu asudas ktani. When you read the Mishnah Elu treifas, you thought that every single case of that Mishnah is treif. No. Elu asudas ktani v'yeshman nevezi b'treifas. This is what the Mishnah meant to say. Everything that the following is going to be asa, but some of them are asa al treif, and some of them are asa nevela and generate tumah as well. And therefore, Nikulas have venture, for example, that's treif, but psek zagageres is nevela. That's the Rabba's answer. So words are missing in the next Mishnah. If the Mishnah there is not only tabulating the treifus, but also the nevela. So I'll give us a few other examples. Why does the Mishnah there add the cases of chizke as well, which are nevelas? For example, also gisted, if you cut through the behema halfway, you cut half the behema or the lengthwise or widthwise, and even though the behema is still jumping around, it's a nevela. Why do you count that in the Mishnah if you're counting the veilus? And not if let's say the thigh is missing, and all the meat around it, so now when you look there, you can see a hole, you see a vacuum, is the veila. So why does Mishnah count that? Saying, well, that's not a kasha. Kik tani nevela d'lemetama machayim. Talking about nevela that only happened after it's dying already. You shechted through the veisha and you found the psek is a gageres. That's only after it's dying. Aval nevela d'metama machayim. But let's say the leg is missing. It's the animal was jumping around, still alive. It's not dead yet. The leg tani. Those kind of veilus we're not learning. We're not counting. Okay, that's what Rav Shimon Lakish gives another answer. He says. It depends. You want to know why the next Mishnah counts as a treif and our Mishnah counts to get as nevela? I'll tell you why. Over here is talking about sheshachat. Over here is talking about In other words, I disagree with the Rabbi. The next Mishnah is only counting treifas. We're not talking about nevelas at all. Here you're talking about, our Mishnah is talking about you shechted b'makom chotach. You shechted where already there was, the Reiv Gageres was already broken, and you shechted in exactly the same space. And Kansha Shochat Shaloi Mochan. The next Mishnah is talking about you shechted it, not where the chaticha was. If you shechted it not where the broken part was, you went lower down the Gageres, you shechted it, means the shechita was good. You shechted everything good. Why is it trade? Because above that there was a psika. That's called psul davar achar. Something else. It's not the shechita that was no good. It's another problem. Therefore, over there that becomes treif. Our mission is talking about that you shechted where the where it was broken already. And therefore that's why it's possible. So he says here. Kan sheshachat shalei b'makom chatach. Shachat b'makom chatach. If you shechted with makom chatach, which we just said before is nifsel b'shchita, that's called. It became possible doing this. The shchita itself is not good because you shechted b'makom chatach. Therefore, that's nevela. Like we said in the mission, that's the rule. The next minute is talking about you cut it somewhere else. So the shchita was good. Why is it possible? Because above that there was a psika. Oh, okay, so that's treif. Says the Gemara, "Umi Amar Rab Shimon Lakish Hachi." Rab Shimon Lakish Hachi say that. Well, Rab Shimon Lakish, he said, "Shochat esakana." He said an interesting thing. He said that when you shechted the kana, that sim is completely finished. The reya, the lung, is connected to the trachea, right? That's where it goes. So if after you shechted the kana, before you went ahead and shechted the second sim, and somehow or another the reya became treif at that instant, you made it became treif at that very, because a slightest nekev in the reya makes possible. You made a nekev out of something, you made it treif. It doesn't bother us. You know why? Because the reya is part of the kana, and the kana already finished. You already finished the job with the kana. We don't care what you do with the kana now. You can do whatever you want with the kana. It's still all right. You shut the kana. And then afterwards you puncture the lung. Shade is kosher. Why is it kosher? And the way we understood right now is, and this is how we're going to remain then as well. As if you took the trachea out of the stomach and you put it in the basket. In other words, it's no longer part of the animal. Whatever you do to the kana doesn't affect the rest of the animal because it's as if it's over.
It's already done.
Exactly. So the reya, even though you didn't, is connected to the kana, nothing involved, right? So that's what it is. Is hachanami. So over here also. Is Hachanam here too? Is command the mancha b'dikula damya. So what are you telling me over here that it becomes an avail if you shechted the raiv and so on and so forth? As soon as you finish the raiv, it's as if you put it in the basket. So when there was so it's over. If it's over, how can you tell me that if you shechted a different part of the kana, it's all good? What do you tell me? If you shechted a different part of the kana, shechita is good. The psuka gageres is also rave of the gageres, otherwise it's not a problem. If psuka gageres is what is what do you call it? Is treif. You said before that the moment you take you did went through most of the gageres, it's over, it's out. So you can't shecht again in the kana because the kana is no longer attached to the animal. That's a whole yavor. Command the munach b'kupsadam. You're saying as if you took the whole kana out of the day. We don't care what happens afterwards. So too, what do we care if you shecht afterwards? It's fafalni. You shechted a dead behemoth. It's already no longer there. So how can you make a difference if we shechted with the chatach or you shechted below the chatach? That's no difference. The moment you went through most of gageres, it's not part of the animal anymore. Finished. Very simple. Remember, Rabbi Akiva and our Mishnah first argued that it's treif, and then later argued Rabbi Yeshiva, and Rabbi Yeshiva finally he agreed. Very simple. Our Mishnah is talking about, after Rabbi Akiva already was made to Rabbi Yeshiva. The Mishnah of El Treif is talking about before Rabbi Akiva changed his mind. Well, Mishnah Lezazim Harikan Lacha Chazara. Our Mishnah about at the Chazara. The next Mishnah is Kaid Chazara. Well, Mishnah Lezazim Kaima. Once they memorized the Mishnah, they never wanted to change it. I told you once what the Pharisee says the beautiful thing. Why do you find so many times that we say the Mishnah is missing a few words, and this is how you should say? So why don't we just put them in the Mishnah, fill them in? Because they used to sing everything and how to memorize. They sing a song. And once you memorize something, if you try to change it afterwards, you forget everything. A Mishka Babel. So therefore, you leave the Mishnah the way it is, and you put it in the Gemara. Now this is what has to be inserted. Same thing here. And it actually asks an interesting question. But that Mishnah is written after this Mishnah. You tell me if Akiva already would change his mind in our Mishnah, and the next Mishnah you go back to where he was before the Mishnah. So Rashi says there's no say there when it comes from Shnais. We says Rashi, but we know we have a rule that within the same Masechta, if you have a stam, the Achikach Machlekes, it's very important. In two Masechtas, we say we don't know which Mishnah was said first. We don't know if it's the Machlekes written after this anonymous, unanimous Mishnah or was written before. But within the same Masechta, if you have the first Perek, let's say a stam, and the second Perek of Machlekes, that means Rebbe wasn't sure. But if you have the first Perek of Machlekes and afterwards, later in the second Perek, you have a stam, anonymous and unanimous, we'll say that what? That's the halacha. So Rashi said that's only Negei halacha. But if it was not Negei halacha, you will leave even the Mishnayos were not in order. Says let's analyze if Shmuel said, you shech the corner, then you puncture the reya, kshed is kosher. Why? It's gone. Only when it comes to the lung, because the lung is part of the trachea. Because it's part of the trachea, so therefore once you shech the corner is no longer attached to the animal, we don't care what happens afterwards. It doesn't affect the rest of the animal. But if you touch most of the intestines, which is attached to the esophagus, then it's a different story. If you made possible the b'nei ma'ayim before you shechted the esophagus, that will make it the animal trade because the esophagus is still very intact. You have to shecht it, and the b'nei ma'ayim is attached to the veshet. So therefore, you made a trade. Maskil or Reb Zayda asked a question. Reb Zayda did not understand the shlokish way we just said that once you went through the corner, the reason why the ray is kosher is because it's gone. He learned because once you cut through the ray, the animal's only half alive. The whole idea of treifa is that you're killing the animal. The animal's already dying anyway. It's only half alive, so therefore, if you make a puncture in the reya, it no longer really adds much to the killing part of the animal. If that's the word, what's the chiluk the reya or the b'nei mayim? What's the chiluk? So Rabbi Zayda asked, he tart, and yet you said it's mutter, doesn't do anything. Puncturing the reya, and my understanding the reason is because the animals already half dying anyway, and by chatzi, it doesn't add anything. Is mali b'nei mayim? That's how we understood the Chatchila. But we know clearly, Bahadar Beit Abzei changed his mind. He realized that our pshat is the correct pshat. That the reason why the rei is nothing with Chatzi Chayis. It has to do with the fact that the rei is attached to the corner. The corner is no longer part of an animal. The Boyer, how do I know the Beit Abzei changed his mind? Because the Boyer Abzei, interesting question. When you shech the first sim in an animal, you're going to do two things. First of all, you're going to remove the nevelis part of it, and also you're going to make a mutter bachila. In our Mishnah, when you shech the first thing there, and then let's say there's a puncture in the reya, what are you now doing? When you're going to cut through the second simon, you're no longer going to be matter about, let's say not a puncture, but let's say the psulim in Mishnah, if something happened wrong, if let's say there's a hole in the veshet, a hole in b'nei mayim, if there's a hole in b'nei mayim, then you're not going to make this animal anymore. We just said it's safe. But when you continue shechting through the veshet, at least it's no longer nevela. So when you did the first simon, you did two things. It's mater nevela and mater achila. If there's a nekev in the b'nei ma'ayim and then you shech through the veshet, what you do is only one thing now. You mater the tumah part of the nevela, but you're eating you can't because the animal's treif. So the question is, do we say that, do we combine the two simonim in this case where each simon is doing a different thing, and is it taka true that it's matzah and nevel or not? But if they the nikfu b'nei mayim based simon, you puncture the b'nei mayim between one simon and ma'u, mim instead of simon additional simon shein l'tam nevel, we say it's a shchita no longer nevel, or lie, or we say no because they're doing two different things. Now, how do we know that he's only asking as far as Tum is concerned? Because his Talmidim said, "Lav Hainus Boy Ilfa." The same question that Ilfa asked. It's amazing. Ilfa, we haven't timed this as a friend of Rabbi Yechon. He could have been a shiva. We don't find Ilfa really only in Zvachim and here only by Kabbonis. He got very excited about Kabbonis. But he went to business and he was learning at the same time. The boy Ilfa has a question. The din is that Ben Pekua. We'll learn later in Chulin. You check the mother, the baby found inside is mutter. You don't need to. What happens if the baby stuck its hand out? That part is Avim Lachai, not allowed to eat it. Only the rest of the animal. So, but if a Haiti Uber is the other, the Uber stuck out his hand between one sim and the other. Mao, can you continue shechting? Can you shechting the mother? Me mistara, do we say that mistarev simen rishon the simen shein letara? That what is coming to me matayir? Do we say that what that's matayir? Since they both it won't be matzah achila the hand, but at least the hand is no longer mitame. Or do we say no? That since the first simon would have been matzah when did the kid this uber stick his hand out between the first and second? The first simon is going to be matzah the behemoth to eat. The second one sachakol is only be matzah the hand that is not on the vela. Do we combine the first simon to the second simon and say, oh, there was a shchita here, so at least the hand is no longer matame? Or do we say No, you can't. It's true. It's not a shchita because the first simon you were matter, you were going to eat the whole hand, but now that the hand stuck out, you can't eat it. So the second simon is not going to do that. So they don't combine at all. So we see what are we talking about? Only regarding tumen, and that's Rabzei's question. Who told Rabzei to change his mind? Maybe Rabzei the Lidvar of the Rava Kamalei. This is Rava's pshat. I don't learn pshat like the Nish Lakish. You can invite eat part of the intestines, including when we say minimayim over here, we mean the ray of the lung. You're allowed to give to eat the lung because the moment you shecht it through the corner, the lung already now is dead. It's part of the corner. You can't invite a goy because the animal's still alive. You haven't finished yet. And by a goy, it's not shchita that's matter; it's the death. My time Yisrael the b'shchita time milsa do b'shchita kiveni k'shchita ma'isa Yisrael is mutter. By a goy, you have to kill it. Therefore, the misa time is to do misa. So the Gemara, and therefore Hanik Evim Chaydomi. It's like an Evim and a Chay for a goy because the animal's still alive. You didn't finish. Papa have a sivnik kamer b'achay. I'm not saying little boy. And I asked the question. David immediately saw what, but you allowed to eat it, and not allowed to. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I was going to say it. I wanted to ask him, but I didn't. I thought to myself, time will come. And he gave us a good reason. Why? By Yid, because he did a shchita, and by nothing cooler or chumrah. It's what defines death. We learned not like him. We learned actually, you won't eat from an animal before it died. Because it's more juicy or something, more blood. Cut a kazayis basa from the base of shchita, before it stopped jumping around. Salted very well. Rinse it very well. You have to wait till the animal finally dies, and then the oichle is supposed to be very healthy. Whatever it is, eat it. Because once something's even after the animal is dead, you cannot eat it. But a guy's allowed to eat it. That since it's mutter for eat, it's mutter for a guy. If you want to be healthy, you cut out a kazai, you carve out a kazai's basar from the by the behemoth, or from the neck of the behemoth. You rinse it and you salt it. You have to wait till the animal dies. Whether eat or a guy, mutarim ba, and we don't say, oh, a guy has to wait for the misa, and we don't say, oh, it's even lachai, and that's not